A lack of knowledge about, a lack of sophistication on both of these researchers' part about the neurological process of the brain, how memories are processed and how they're spit back out or not. I keep up on that stuff as often as I can. And it seems to me you shouldn't be messing in anyone's mind unless you have a great deal of training and sophistication in dealing with people's memories. Saying what is the difference between, often this comes up in an interview, the first interview before anyone has hypnosis. The question will be, how do I know this wasn't a dream? And I think those explanations were often not very convincing to me, at least. So, the knowledge base in people who do this kind of research needs to be amazingly diverse across multiple fields and sciences. And Bud is not even interested in science. He doesn't even read science, nor does he read psychology. I don't know how you can do this without knowing so many different disciplines and being good in them.
But how was he performing hypnotherapy, or hypnosis, I should say, to these individuals without at least understanding what hypnosis is supposed to be?
He observed, I think for the first 5 years, he worked under 3 different psychiatrists who did the hypnosis, and Bud was the person sitting in, often, asking questions. And he learned from observing. And I actually think he's very good at getting people into that state. I think he even goes into a very relaxed state himself. Something that I've read lately was talking about the brain waves of 2 people who are very simpatico. As one-on-one, their brain waves begin to entrain.
I was going to say sympathetic entrainment, yeah.
Yes. That's amazing. Just to even understand at that level, you are one with that person in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And influencing them.
And the influence
this is not by evil intent. I think that a lot of this is from lack of sophistication in these fields.
And you wrote an article, Tom, can you remind me the name of the magazine, or Carol?
It's Paratopia.
Paratopia.
Yeah, Paratopia. And that splashed out there and created a lot of waves, which is good. Waves are good. And what has been your response from that?
Actually, from a lot of old-time researchers in the field, an amazingly positive response. People, either calling or emailing me and thanking Tyler and I both for speaking up about research methods that they had all questioned for many, many years. And, partly I wanted to just shake them and say, why didn't you speak up? But, this is a community. It is a very insular, recursive group of people. And anything they do if they do one talk show, it means they can't do somebody else's talk show because that's on the enemies list. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Really? So they have that as well. And I guess that counts for speaking engagements too.
You bet.
There's the people that are allowed to talk at speaking engagements, and there are those who are blacklisted.
Yes, absolutely.
And now, just giving Bud his credit here, he always was a very good speaker.
Yes, he is.
And when he gets up on stage, and that guy's like a magician, and more power to him for that.
Yes. No, he's a natural-born storyteller.
Yeah. Now, what do you think was the major motivation on either one of them between Bud and Dr. Jacobs? Ultimately, what was their motivation?
Oh, I don't really like to go into that territory. It means I can read their minds, but I guess if you've been married to someone for 10 years, you have a pretty good idea of what moves them. I think that they are both, and I do know David. I think they are both have gotten to the point of the involvement in this paranormal research where they are completely convinced that the reality that, in my opinion, they've partially constructed, this horrific alien invasion, the secret alien invasion via the hybridization, they're really convinced this is happening. I was on the Cape with the Jacobs family, had rented a house several doors down from the place where we usually stayed for the summer. And over dinner one night, I suddenly, in a pause in the conversation with Dave's wife, I heard Dave Jacobs say, "Bud, you and I are the only people on the planet who know what's going on." And my mouth dropped open, and I sort of blurted out, "God, David, that's a little bit of a dangerous way to think, isn't it? You're the only people on the planet?" And that was not well received.
Right, little scary, really. And that was talking behind the scenes. There was no interviewer. There's no crowd. There's no. This is personally at the dinner table, just having a.
Absolutely.
So they believe it 100%. They
do.
Both believe it.
Yes, they do. Yeah. Somebody asked me that once. So when they, get off the podium and turn away, are these guys fakes? And they start laughing at these people? No, not at all. They do believe what they're doing.
Right.
But did you ever confront Bud and say, look, if you have a belief system, how are you able to conduct, a session with an individual or an investigation of some sort without having an impartial?
I think at a certain point in his investigation, I think he was so convinced he no longer felt it necessary to even take those sorts of precautions. It was just a fact. If someone would call and say they had a terrible fear of clowns and maybe mention they'd seen a UFO or something they thought was a UFO, that alone would tend to tell Bud that was a probable abductee. It didn't take much. And sometimes people would be told over the phone on the first phone call. Well, unfortunate news was they were probably abductees.
Okay.
But
so that would be seed planted.
Yes.
But what happened, though, in cases that they turned out to be, fakes or not,
Are you asking about a specific case, Tom?
No, just in general. Like when they would deal with something and then they would find out that maybe it wasn't what it was supposed to be or what they thought it was.
It depends how far in. In the Jim Mortellaro case, for example, and the Linda case, Bud went out on a limb and was presenting these cases at conferences very early on into the research. And once you stand up in front of Phil Klass and various other people and say that this is what you believe, this is what has happened, it's not just what you believe, this is what the data shows you, it seems to me for certain people it's very, very hard to back down from that. And that's very much...
Yeah, because he was already committed in that case.
Yes, you're committed. Right.
Yes.
But scientific method. But I was going to ask that in situations where you've seen many cases besides the big named cases, was there any case in there that you felt it started out within a reasonable idea, and then somehow, it was found out not to be true.
I think that Bud would try not to be fooled. Nobody wants to be a fool. I think that what he often did was to, if certain danger signs or flags came up, he wrote a letter to the board, his board of advisors, that said he often finds red flags and he kind of puts them aside for a while and keeps on pursuing the case. And often he finds those red flags can be done away with. And now, whether they're done away with because the research was extraordinarily good and he found the case to be real, or because he just buried the red flags, that's the question. I think in some cases, some notable cases, he was not willing to admit that he had been hoaxed.
Right. And in the scientific method, if you prove something wrong, that's a time to celebrate. That means, okay, great, it wasn't that answer. Let's go find the real answer.
Yeah, not here.
So, was there any cherry picking? Did he go through the cases? Not just, David as well. So did they go through the cases and sort of cherry pick ones that had, I'd say, high strangeness or interesting, the ones that are more interesting than the others, and those are the ones you run with, sort of thing?
That was my perception, yes.
No doubt on that one.
I'd started videotaping at least 25 different cases, which would be initial interviews and initial hypnosis sessions with 25 different people in the first year, and I was really puzzled as to why usually 24 had not been pursued, sometimes even 25. And if I ask, well, what is your method for choosing the case to pursue? There was a great deal of anger there at being questioned. And I pretty much learned fairly soon that questions weren't too welcome.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but you were noticing, because you're the one doing a lot of the filming. You're on the other end of the camera. So after a while, I'm sure you were picking up on the fact that perhaps this case isn't exceptional enough, hasn't got enough sparkle and glitter.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean that those people don't also need help.
No, and he would acknowledge that the less sparkly cases could very probably were absolutely valid abductions. It's just that just as I got a little bored after a while standing for hours behind a camera and you hear the same standard classic narrative. Bud hasn't even higher threshold of bored. He's more easily bored even than I, and he wanted new material.
Right.
But
so the next bells and whistles.
Isn't that also though to feed the the speaking engagements and books and whatever else needed to be done?
Well, that certainly comes out of it if you get a spectacular case.
But was it ever at any time that you've known him, from his past, did you ever feel that was a big part of the motivation that he was doing?
Again, I'd rather not go too much into motivation right now.
Okay. Because
that's fine. I hear you.
One of the things that I found, over the years, and that was a big thing for me, was that a lot of what I call career individuals in this industry, always needed something new, something amazing to be able to tell out there. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in the podium or able to write books.